can try. We can bring the guitar. They're ready for the sound test, so can we do a quick sound test? Yes.
Friends, welcome to JW3, whether you're here in the room with us or whether you've joined us online. I'm Raymond. It's my great privilege to be the CEO of this unique cross-communal Jewish community centre. And before this evening's memorial begins and I hand over to the organisers of it, I was just asked to say a few words to help set the tone so that we're all on the same page. And then I'll hand over to the partner organisations who have planned and run this organisation, this memorial. Most of us in the room will know that it was just over a week ago that Jews all over the world were in synagogue reading the words from Kohelet that famously begin, "Everything has an appointed season, and there is a time for every matter under the heaven, a time to give birth and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot that which has been planted." It goes on to remind us there's a time for everything, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time of wailing and a time of dancing. Friends, this evening is a time for being together, a time for being in community, a time for prayer and reflection, a time for healing and a time for listening. That also means tonight is not the time for arguing. It's not the time for heckling or interrupting because a speaker that you don't happen to like is up on our stage. It's not the time to share your views loudly during the ceremony. JW3 is a safe, welcoming, cross-communal space, and I kindly ask you all tonight to respect the solemnity of this occasion and act appropriately. I wish that wasn't something that I felt I had to say, and that's not directed at any of you personally. That's just based on our experience of trying to run cross-communal safe spaces during periods like this. The last thing I want is for any of our security team to have to ask anybody to leave. We are only able to stay open like any Jewish community organisation at the moment due to the incredible work of our security team, run by SQR. So please don't forget to thank any of the security officers you see this evening on your way out. And I'll just leave you with the words of the late Rabbi Lord Sachs after a previous period of heinous terrorist attacks when he wrote, "What terrorists seek to destroy, we will continue to build. Community, democracy, tolerance, respect for each other, and the sanctity of life." Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Rabbi Leah Mühlstein, the immediate past chair of Artzenu, chair of the European Union for Progressive Judaism, and rabbi of the Ark Synagogue in Northwood. Thank you for joining us for tonight's memorial, co-organized by Artzenu, Habonim Dror, the Jewish Labor Movement, the Jewish News, LJY Netzer, Masorti Judaism, the New Israel Fund, Noam, Progressive Judaism, RSY Netzer, and Yachad. Together with my colleagues, Rabbi Jeremy Gordon of the New London Synagogue and Rabbi Jordan Helfman, the vice chair of Artzenu, and Rabbi at Oaks Lane Reform Synagogue, I have the privilege of guiding us through the next 90 minutes. In his poem, The Diameter of the Bomb, the late Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai describes the far-reaching impact of terrorist murder. Let me quote just one small section. והאיש הבודד הבוכה על מותה בירכתי אחת ממדינות הים הרחוקות מכליל במעגל את כל העולם. ולא אדבר כלל על זעקת יתומים המגיע עד לכיסא האלוהים ומשם הלאה. And a solitary man mourning her death at the distant shores of a country far across the sea includes the entire world in the circle. And I won't even mention the crying of orphans that reaches up to the throne of God and beyond. We gather tonight as part of that far-reaching circle of the greatest tragedy and loss of Jewish life since the Shoah. With our presence, we will honor the memory of those murdered, Jews, Israelis, human beings of various nationalities and faiths. As we mourn the loss of all innocent life, we will pray for the safe return of the 199 captives. If you're able to, I invite you now to rise as we light a candle here in the room. After the event, you will all have an opportunity to light your own candles, but for now, we will light this candle here on stage. We will begin with silence, the silence of death, the silence after destruction. There are times when songs falter, when darkness fills life, when martyrdom becomes a constellation of faith against the unrelieved black of space about us. There are no words to reach beyond the edge of night, no messenger to tell the full tale. There is only silence. The silence of those murdered, the silence of memory, the silence of those held captive. Let us remember them as we link our silences. You may all be seated. Throughout this evening, representatives of our youth movement will join us on the stage. And I first now invite the readers of the poem Bore by Rita.
Come, let us disperse the screen of fog. Come, let us stand in the light and not in the darkness. How long will we keep running away? To the games of control. You are allowed to cry sometimes when something breaks inside of you.
Tell me a little about the moments of fear, as it's much easier to fear together. And when cold winds storm outside, I will send to you a warm fire. One day, maybe you will stop running among the shadows in the soul.
Come, let us disperse the screen of fog. Come, let us stand in the light and not in the darkness. How long will we keep running away? To the games of control. You are allowed to shiver sometimes when something wonderful is happening inside. Tell me a little about the moments of happiness until the morning sun rises upon us.
And when cold winds storm outside, I will send to you a warm fire. And one day, maybe you will stop running among the shadows in the soul. Tell me a little about the moments of fear, as it is much easier to fear together.
Thank you for this beautiful poem. I now have the honor to introduce our first testimony. Before I introduce our speaker, just a word to say that if you feel like you need to leave at any point, please just do so quietly. And if you do need support, we'll make sure that there is somebody here who can support you. Our first speaker is Avi Dabush. Avi lives in Sderot and will share his personal testimony of that day, just not last Saturday, the Saturday before. He's the director of Rabbis for Human Rights and has been at the forefront of the call signed by 160 Israeli rabbis to free the hostages captured by Hamas. And Avi will be joining us now on Zoom.
I need you to help me show the video. Oh,
I think our tech
Yeah,
team is trying
yeah.
to help you.
okay. Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm talking to you from Eilat. Me and my community from Kibbutz Nirim and other communities are here in Eilat and in other places. And you know, I just watch you, and I will watch the ceremony as far as I can. And it was really moving for me. I know in this week that we have so much concern from our brothers and sisters in the UK and in other countries. And especially myself and our organization have a special connection with the UK and the organization that you mentioned, the Yachad and the youth movements and other organizations. And for me, it's like, you know, getting love and support from very dear friends. And it's time that it's really needed. And like you say in the song, that I can hear the tune, not only the words, that ask for telling about the fear, about the moments of fear. I will tell you very briefly. I'm sure that you heard so much. I must tell you that I can't hear any news in this week because the news is on us, you know, my friends, my family, the community I live in Nirim. It's a kilometer from Khan Yunis, from the border of Gaza, and communities like Nir Oz, Be'eri, Kfar Aza, Sderot, that I used to live for many years. So I really can't hear the news because we are the news, unfortunately. In the Shabbat, in the Saturday of Simchat Torah, we woke up at 6:30 with a lot of sirens. We ran to our shelter. Unfortunately, it's a thing that we did so many times in the last 20 years or 22 years. And I was with my wife. My children actually was by miracle in Bor Hail. It's another kibbutz on the region of Sderot, but it's far after Sderot. And we were, myself, my wife, and her children in the shelter. And after something like 5 minutes, we understood that something is happening. Like we heard the gun shooting and things that we are not used to. So I really can't tell right now. I'm trying all the time how and when exactly, but after 5 minutes I ran all over the house, and I closed and shut all the windows and the door and brought the cell phones and the charger and water, and we were in the shelter. And then after 5 minutes, we heard calling and commands in Arabic, and again a lot of gun shooting. We understood that Hamas soldiers are inside the kibbutz, and you know it's not a common thing, of course, and it was so scary. But we thought that after 15 minutes, after 20 minutes, the army will come and wash them away. And this is kind of the agreement, the contract that we have with our country. And you know, it's really amazing and really sad that a lot of people start to talk about the Holocaust. That it's another time that we are we are hopeless, with no hope, with no power, and only fearful, and each one is for himself or for his family. And unfortunately, for 8 hours, it was like that. No army at all, just shooting, just terrorists, Hamas soldiers that coming into the houses, killing people, kidnapping people, burning our houses, burning our cars, and ruin our infrastructures like water, gas, electricity, and so on. And only after 8 hours, the army came, and then it was another something like 20 or more hours that we were in the shelter, and after that in a safer place inside the kibbutz. And only on a Sunday afternoon, we left the kibbutz. I stayed in the area. I went to Bochail to bring my children, and only on Monday I came to Eilat. And we're still trying to figure out what happened. It's like, you know, in the shelter when it was dark and we were whispering, my wife and I, and the only weapon that we have was my sweaty hand on the door, that if they will come, I will try to stop them. I told her it's a dream. Yeah, it has to be a dream. Like, it wasn't anything that we can imagine at all. And still, in a way, we are feeling it's like a dream. Of course, there is another waking up and another waking up each day. We are hearing about so many people that we know. You know, when we went to Eilat with my kids and their mother, my older son is 17, and all the way is telling us, you know, they murder a girl from my class and all her family, 6 people, Goldstein family from Kfar Aza. And after that, he's telling, you know, they murder also Mishpachat Kutz, Kutz family, also from Kfar Aza, 5 people that used to play soccer with their boys. And then he's talking about his Bible teacher, that then we thought she was kidnapped from Be'eri, and 2 days ago we learned that she died, she was murdered. And a lot of faces and friends and families like that all the time we're hearing more and more. And of course, also in Nirim, I coordinating all the work with the families of the kidnapped from Nirim, and also we are working with Nir Oz and Be'eri. And it's like heartbreaking. Our best friends from Nirim, their son and his wife was taken away. There is a lot of indication that they are alive and captured by Hamas, but still there isn't any connection. And as you mentioned, we are really hoping, praying, and demanding that something will happen, even in the days of this terrible war. I want to say 2 more things. The first one, that we have such a huge challenge, because I really feeling that we felt in getting support or security for our children, and it is so wrong that children from, you know, very young age to adulthood, and so on, are part of this horrible reality. And now we must fix that. We must repair and help them to see that we can rise from this terrible situation. So the rise will be together, of course. I really push all the ministers and the Knesset members and others, the Jewish agency and the banks in Israel and so on. We have to rush them to make, and of course you are part of it, to make a coalition in order to repair the communities and settlements on the border of Gaza, Sderot area, Ofakim area, and of course the kibbutzim, Nirim, Niroz, Kfar Aza, Netiv HaSara, Nachal Oz, and so on, that suffered so much physically, not only, of course, in terms of our human people and our community, but also physically. So we must gain a lot of resources to help us to go back. I'm hoping that it will be on months and not years. And of course, we must gain more security, because we can't really go back when we know this Hamas that really had, unfortunately, victory in military terms, but then a terrible defeat in terms of their morality. And we understand now what we are dealing with. I'm one of the people that said that we must talk to Hamas and of course the Palestinian Authority and Egypt and so on. But now I know that with Hamas we can talk. And this war, unfortunately, we have to make this war. But in this war, we must not get a revenge, thinking about revenge, harming innocent people and civilians. And this is for two reasons. The first one is, of course, our morality, our Jewish morality, our universal morality. And we know that this is wrong. And when it's a fight between good and evil, we must be very clear about what good is. But also, I believe that it's counterproductive, because if we really want to defeat Hamas, and it will be really hard with a lot of, unfortunately, our soldiers that will be killed. And of course, it's not really a thing that we want to kill people, even if they are so wrong and so evil. But if we want to succeed, we must avoid as much as we can hurting civilians, hurting other people, other humans that we just read Bereshit, Genesis, that they are also creations of God. So I really still in shock, and we are strong, but really in shock. And I'm praying and also trying to push with my basic resources and our organization and our community and other very good people. And I hope you are, and I know that you are part of this coalition, in order for us to go back to our communities, to help to repair and gain the security and the trust of our children, of our communities. And of course, being in a place that bring in more light to this world and not being part of the problem. So thank you again so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Avi, for allowing us to bear witness to your story. We send you and your family and your community strength as you mourn, as you begin to heal, and also think about the task of repairing. I would like to invite now all of us to bring our voices together and to join together in song. I think most of you will be familiar with the words of Eli, Eli, and they will come up on the screen in just a moment. These famous words, written by Hannah Senesh. We could just have the words on the screen.
Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rish rush shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam, hachol v'hayam, rish rush shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam.
Thank you. And it's my privilege to hand over to Rabbi Jeremy Gordon, who has longer legs than me and being able to go up that way.
Rabbi Leah, thank you so much. Benjamin, thank you so much. I think it's so important to acknowledge that there's no hatred in our hearts for innocent people of any race, of any religion, of any nationality. And we want to take a moment this evening to acknowledge victims of that awful attack from faiths and nationalities other than our own. I'm going to invite some members of our extraordinary youth movements in this country to read the poem Think of Others by Mahmoud Darwish in honor of those victims.
As you fix your breakfast, think of others. Do not forget to feed the pigeons. As you fight in your wars, think of others. Do not forget those who desperately demand peace. As you pay your water bill, think of others who drink the clouds' rain.
As you return home, your home, think of others. Don't forget those who live in tents. As you sleep and count planets, think of others. There are people without any shelter to sleep. As you express yourself using all metaphorical expressions, think of others who lost their rights to speak. As you think of others who are distant, think of yourself and say, I wish I was a candle to fade away the darkness.
Thank you. I want to share a warm welcome to Limor Celebroida, who's come from Israel to share testimony, to share edut about the 12 members of her family who've been taken captive from the kibbutzim of Nachal Oz in Be'eri. Limor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Limor. 12 of my family members were taken captive by Hamas from, as the rabbi mentioned, from kibbutz Nahal Oz and kibbutz Be'eri. It feels so odd to be in a memorial service when this event is so much still vivid and alive in our hearts and our minds. I came from Israel this Sunday and I'm returning to Israel. It's a battlefield, basically. I'm returning tomorrow to my husband and 3 kids. It's uncanny to think about 12 family members of the same family. I was thinking about sharing their specific stories about when we lost contact and what was their last sentences to us, either in a text or a call. But I think this story is so much bigger than one family, 2, 3, or 4 in my case. As Jews, since the beginning of time, we have a shared destiny and a shared faith. And at times like this community, being able to be part of something this great, not only the community that is in Israel, but everyone else that's around us. My family members, we have 2 American citizens that came for a family visit in Israel and were taken, my cousin and her daughter. Family members that don't actually live in Be'eri, they were just visiting for the last day of the holidays. Simchat Torah, coming to visit their grandparents, their aunts, and were taken from the safety of their homes, from the shelter within their homes. It's even hard to comprehend. And it doesn't matter if you lose one person or an entire family, your heart is bleeding. And at these times of shared pain, as the people before me mentioned, it's time to come together as a community and help rebuild. It's so easy to break the life work of countless people. But when we come together stronger as a community in this multicultural, multi-community center, as an example, this is where our strength come to light. And we're gonna need our brothers and sisters from around the world to help us rebuild. And we're gonna need your resources, and we're gonna need your contacts, and we're gonna need our communities around the world to help us rebuild. And we're gonna come back stronger, because that's our obligation, and it's our privilege. And I'm here to ask for your help. Me and 2 of my friends, also family members of kidnapped and missing people. We came to the UK in a shared mission to raise awareness, share the voice of our family members that are missing and cannot speak for themselves, and ask for democracies around the world to unite against this horrific event. My hands are sweating and I'm losing words, and this is where we show strength, and we need you to be able to do this. So I invite you to open your hearts, open your minds, open your laptops, find a cause, find your root. I'm sure your communities will assist, and lend a hand so that we can do this together. Thank you for having me.
Limor, for your bravery and for your inspiration, we salute you. I've been thinking about this strange word, memorial. There's no word really that works, but maybe the English word memorial suggests only deaths that have happened. But the Hebrew word zikaron suggests something different. It suggests a call to action. And I know for Limor, odlo, right? Odlo. I want to share, with your permission, just some words of shlichut from a member of my community at New London, Noam Sagi. Noam grew up on kibbutz near Oz, and his mother, Ada Sagi, is among those missing, presumed kidnapped and taken into Gaza. And Noam has 2 very clear calls to action for us, which I share in his name and in others' honor. We should contact our MPs. We should reach out to our MPs and say that we call on them to call on the government of this country to do everything it can to ensure an immediate release, an unconditional release of the hostages, and particularly of the children, and particularly of the aged. It is unconscionable. It's unhumane. It's an affront to everything that we hold dear as human beings. and as a backup call for a humanitarian corridor to be provided to allow an organization, any organization, Red Cross, Red Crescent, Médecins Sans Frontières, into Gaza to verify who is there and to assess the basic human needs of the people there. I know that the MP in the constituency in which we stand, the constituency in which I live, Tulip Sadiq, has been very clearly engaged in this work, as has Noam's MP. But there is so much more we can do to bring this call to everybody's attention. I think it's the only call that we can make in this time that will save lives, that will save the lives of Jews and will save the lives of Palestinians. And it's the only call that we can make in this time that will reduce the escalation of pressures and tensions. I urge us all to do something to make that call in any direction in which we can exert any democratic power. I want to share a prayer for the Pidyon Shvu'im, for the immediate redemption of all held captives, an obligation which Rambam calls in Hilchot Matnot Le'Evyonim. He says, Ein mitzvah rabba mizah. There is no greater obligation upon us. Please rise at this time. Eloheinu matir ha'asurim, misgav ledach, misgav li'itut b'tzara, shelach hatzala shlema, ufidyon gamor lenitunim b'shevi oyev. Chizki rucham, hevi lahem et tefilatenu l'shomram meira, tani bina belev oyev lahashivam b'shlimut guf v'nefesh. Tani tvuna, בלוחמי צה"ל, בחלצם בלא איבוד נפשות. תן לכל בני ובנות אברהם, שרה והגר, את עוז הרוח ואומץ הלב, להתיר כבלי שבי לחיות חיי חירות. יקרני וענהו עמו אנוכי לצרה, אכלצהו ואכבדהו. God, the one who releases the captives, a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble, send complete rescue and redemption to all those held captive by the enemy. Strengthen their spirit and bring them our prayers, that they may be protected from all harm. Implant understanding in the heart of the enemy, that they may return the captives in wholeness of body and spirit. Grant wisdom to the Israel Defense Forces, that they may secure freedom for the captives without loss of life. Grant strength of spirit and courage of heart to all the sons and daughters of Abraham, Sarah and Hagar, to release bonds of captivity and allow us all to live in freedom. They shall call upon me, says God, and I will answer them. I will be with them in distress. I will rescue them and honor them. Let us say, Amen. Please be seated. It's horrendous, really, that as well as recognizing those who've lost their lives and those who've been taken into captivity, there are thousands who are hurting and in pain, suffering from injury. I'd like to invite Jack Froelich and Amy Roberts from RSY to lead us in El Na Rafa Na La. The lyrics will be shown on the screen. This is our prayer for healing for this evening. Please join with them. Prayer for healing. Mishbarach Avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, ve'emotenu Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarach v'yirapeh et kol hacholim. Kadosh Baruch Hu yimaleh rachamim aleihem lahachlimam u'leraputam, ulachazikam u'lachayotam, v'ishlach lehem mehera refuah shlema, refuat hanefesh, refuat haguf, toch shar cholei Yisrael, v'chol hacholim. Hashta ba'agla ubizman kariv, v'nomar, Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal all who are ill. May the Holy Blessed One fill them with kindness and give them strength and healing of body and healing of soul, amongst all those who are ill within Israel and all who are ill and suffering and injured. May that come speedily in our time, and let us say, Amen. I'd like to invite our youth leaders, so movement workers from Noam, to read the poem Wild Peace from Yehuda Amichai.
Not the peace of a ceasefire, not even of the vision of the wolf and the lamb, but rather as in the heart when the excitement is over, and you can only talk about a great weariness. I know that I know how to kill, that makes me an adult, and my son plays with a toy gun that knows how to open and close its eyes and say mama.
A peace without the big noise of beating swords into the plowshares, without words, without the thud of the heavy rubber stamp. Let it be light, floating, like lazy white foam, a little rest for the wounds, who speaks of healing.
And the howl of the orphans is passed from one generation to the next, as in a relay race. The baton never falls.
Let it come like wildflowers, suddenly because the field must have it, wild peace.
Nikki Annabelle, thank you for sharing a dream of world peace. Amen. We're going to hear from Amir Tibon, who took shelter in his home in Kibbutz Nachal Oz during the attack last week before being saved by his father. Amir will be joining us over Zoom.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining. I'm speaking to you right now from Kibbutz Mishmar Emek, which is in north-central Israel, one could say, north of Tel Aviv, but not that close to the border with Lebanon. And this kibbutz has been very generously hosting my community, Kibbutz Nachal Oz, ever since last Saturday night, when we were evacuated from our homes around midnight by the military, after the most difficult and sad day in the history of our community, and frankly, in the history of the state of Israel. My personal story from that day, I have to say, has been shared and quoted and reported quite a lot. But I want to speak a little bit about the overall experience of a community under fire, and more importantly, about the future, in which I hope our friends and partners in the UK and elsewhere will have a very important role. Kibbutz Nachal Oz has been located on the border with Gaza since the early 1950s. I've been a resident of the kibbutz since 2014. And people who choose to live in this community know that there are certain risks involved and understand what it means to protect the border. During the years in which I've been a resident of the kibbutz, we've dealt with several, we call them rounds of hostilities between Israel and terror organizations in Gaza, a constant threat of rocket fire, mortar fire, a very dangerous phenomenon that spread over the last few years, in which Hamas used incendiary devices like balloons and other explosive devices to set up fires in our fields. And this is just a partial list. But I have to say, I was not prepared, and I think most of the community was not prepared for what happened to us on Saturday morning. When we woke up at first to a more recognizable voice, the fall of mortars over our homes, and ran into our shelters, our safe rooms. In every home in our community, there is a room that is built of strong materials, concrete, that is supposed to withstand a direct hit by a rocket or a mortar. And usually most families, that's where they put the kids to sleep. And so when we woke up that morning, because the kibbutz was under fire, we did not understand what was about to be unleashed on us. We locked ourselves in the safe rooms. In my case, my two young girls, 3.5-year-old and 1.5-year-old, were still sleeping. And we waited for the attack to be over. This is something we're used to. Sadly, it's become a part of our reality for more than 2 decades now, in which there's been the threat of mortars and rockets from Gaza. Around 7 a.m., we began to realize this is a different kind of event when we began to hear automatic gunfire approaching us. First, a little bit in the distance, and then closer and closer, until the terrorists were right outside our window. There was a small and very brave group of people, some about 10 people overall, maybe 11, 12, who went out to fight these terrorists and found themselves in a situation not very different from the battles that we hear about in the context of the 1948 Israeli War for Independence. We always hear neither speak about Ma'atim mul Rabim, the few versus the many. In our community, the estimation is that close to 100 terrorists entered the kibbutz that morning. And the force that they met, it was several residents who are part of a local security team. These are civilians. They're not military people, but they are more trained and a little more armed than anyone else. I think the first person who approached them for a gunfire was the security coordinator of our kibbutz, my next door neighbor. His name was Ilan Fiorentino, a father of 3 sweet daughters, and he was killed in battle. 2 other members of this security team also joined the gun battle. And we were lucky to have on the premises of the kibbutz a small group of officers from the Israeli police, from a special unit in the police, that were almost accidentally stationed in our kibbutz the week before, because they were dealing with the riots and protests that people from Gaza were doing on the fence. This small group of fighters for long hours was the only thing that stood in the way of these Hamas terrorists as they tried to go from house to house in the kibbutz and murder innocent families. You can look at what happened in some of the neighboring communities to us, kibbutz Be'eri, kibbutz Kfar Aza, scenes of horrific massacres, stories that to any Jewish person will bring the family memories and the history that we know about from the Holocaust and the era of World War II. During the day, more military forces tried to arrive in the community. Some of them were ambushed along the way. There were fierce and heroic battles between our soldiers and the Hamas terrorists. And while we were locked in our safe rooms, we began to understand the magnitude of the picture, that this was not happening just in our community, but all over the border area, in kibbutzim, in cities and towns, in military bases. In the case of our community, eventually, in the early afternoon, 2 forces, one of them belonging to a special unit and the other belonging to the Givati Brigade, made it into the kibbutz, entered the kibbutz, joined forces with the small force that was already there, and began the process of going from home to home, killing the terrorists and helping our community get out of our safe rooms. I want to note that during those very long hours, most of the residents were sitting in the dark because there was no electricity. We had no food there. We could not open a door or a window for even a little bit of light because we would immediately expose ourselves to danger of death by the hands of the Hamas terrorists. And the community suffered grave and terrible losses. More than 10 people have been killed. We still have members of the community who are missing. We don't know what happened to them, and we presume they were kidnapped into Gaza. And yet, compared to the neighboring communities, our situation is not as bad. If you see the numbers emerging from, again, Be'eri, Kfar Aza, Kibbutz Nir Oz, more in the south, you can even dare to say we were lucky, as much as a disaster has fallen on our home. For my own family, we also went through a bit of a family drama, you can call it, because my father, who's a retired military general who lives in Tel Aviv, decided that morning to come and try to save us. And he and my mother made the trip from Tel Aviv down to the kibbutz, passing through military checkpoints. Along the way, they saved a couple who ran away from the massacre at the party near kibbutz Re'im. They saw them running toward the road. They put them on their car and they took them to safety. Later, as my father tried to approach the kibbutz, he saw a group of Hamas terrorists ambushing a military vehicle on the road into the kibbutz. There was a gunfire over there. He joined the battle, even though he was only armed with a pistol. The soldiers and also my father killed several terrorists there, and 3 of our soldiers were wounded. He took them in his car out of the kibbutz toward another community where my mother was waiting inside a bomb shelter to understand what's happening with us. And my mother took those 3 soldiers to the hospital, and they're all alive, and they've all contacted us since. And my parents met 2 of them. And around little after 4 p.m. in my case, and this again is a story that has been published, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but my father joined the group of the special forces soldiers who entered the kibbutz. They walked from home to home, engaged in gunfire with the terrorists, and after 4 p.m., we heard a large bang on the window of our shelter, and my 2 daughters, my older one is 3.5 years old, my younger one is 1.5 years old. They were quiet for the entire day. They did not cry. They did not make a scene. They understood something was happening. They were just happy that their grandfather has arrived. Our community now is, as I said, being very generously hosted in Mishmar Emek. And if you happen to be in Israel or are planning to visit Israel, I urge you to come and see what is happening here. It will give you a great dose of optimism to see how one community in the midst of this terrible tragedy is opening its door and opening the heart to another community at a time of need and really providing us with everything that we need. And yet it's also important to understand this is a difficult time for us. There are funerals every day. People are sitting Shiva here in the kibbutz, far away from their home. Children who were traumatized on that day are just now beginning to share and speak about what they went through. And the biggest concern we have is about the future. We don't know what the future will bring. Will we be able to return to our homes? When will we be able to return to our homes? Under what conditions will we be able to return to our homes? These are all unknown questions. I can say personally, I try not to think about it too much. The one thing I do know is that there will be a major, major role for our friends in the diaspora if we ever want to achieve this goal of returning to the communities on the Gaza border. Personally, I think it will be the most important Zionist mission of the 21st century. And really, the one question that will determine the question, the one issue that will determine the question of who won and who lost the war. We can kill 10,000 Hamas terrorists in Gaza in the next few weeks. But if a year from today, my neighbors and I don't feel comfortable putting our children in the kindergarten in Nachal Oz and going off to work, Israel will have lost the war. We can destroy every Hamas installation and base and whatever that they have inside Gaza. But if a year from today, my neighbors and I don't feel comfortable putting our kids to sleep in the same rooms where we were locked on Saturday morning, Israel will have lost the war. And so rebuilding these communities is going to be a huge challenge. Unfortunately, I don't have much faith in our current government that it will be up to the task. Personally, I view them, you can imagine, in a very, very negative light after what happened. And I expect them all to resign after the war is over. And if they don't, we will make them. But I do trust our friends in the Jewish diaspora to step up to the moment and to understand what is at stake here. The question really is, will we allow Hamas to win this war by pushing thousands of Israelis outside of an entire region of our country, completely within the internationally recognized borders of the State of Israel? It will be a major challenge. It will require great support from our friends in the diaspora. And I hope that everyone that is here today listening will decide to support us in this process. So thank you for attending this event today. Thank you for listening to me. And thank you, I hope, for thinking now in your mind, what can I do to help these communities and rebuild their future? Toda rabba.
Thank you, Amir. And I'm not sure you can hear all the clapping and applauding as the community here says that we're standing with you in our hearts. And we stand with you soon in our actions as well. Friends, I know all of us feel that something has reached inside of us and grabbed physically our hearts, holding it tight, making it hard to be compassionate, making us think about the tasks ahead. But also, we pause in this moment to mourn. Our tradition teaches that our hearts have many rooms. We are going to first say Al Malay, say Kaddish for our people. But we're also going to keep in our hearts the people in Gaza, Palestinian people, the child in Chicago, the innocents who are being caught up as well in this conflict. So I ask that we take a moment now and we rise for a moment of silence before we say El Malay. And then we'll also say Kaddish, which is in our pamphlet. Belerachamim shochen bamromim Hamse menucha nechona tacha kanfei hashechina b'malo kedeshim tohorim kezohar harakia mazhirim et nishamot b'nei Israel uvonei Zion shnaflu bi'adei hamirachatzim shnahargu v'nishchatu v'nisrafu Al Kiddush Hashem Shalchu Olamam. Baal Harachamim Yastirem Beseter Knafecha Lolamim. Utzror B'tzorachayim and Nishmanotehem. Adonai hu nachalatam. V'yanuchu v'shalom al mishkavotehem. V'nomar Amen. Please join with me. Yikadal v'kadash me'raba. V'yama divrach yutei v'yamlech malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. V'la v'zman kari v'imur. Amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam olmei amaya. V'barach v'shtabach v'ba'ar v'romam v'naseh. V'tadar v'taleh v'talal shmei v'kedusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Yamiran b'yama v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya. V'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael. V'imru. Amen. Osei shalom b'mramav. V'yasei shalom. Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'kol ha'am. V'imru. May the source of peace send peace to all who are bereaved among us and all who mourn, as together we say, Amen. You may be seated for a moment. And I say a moment because very soon we're going to sing together the words of Hatikva that I hope you'll read tonight as a prayer. Lehiot am chofshi ba'artzeinu, that we're able to live as a free people in our land. Tonight you heard many calls that I pray echo in your hearts. The prayer and the call that we show up now and in the future. Kol Yisrael arvim zeh b'zeh. All of us are responsible for one another. We heard the call that we contact our members of parliament and remind them that the friends of our friends are in captivity and need their help, need their immediate release, or at least need to be checked on. We heard today the call for our support, that we open our laptops and our hearts, that we do our best to make sure that the communities living near the Gaza Strip are able to return to their homes, able to put their kids to sleep in their bedrooms once again. Let's join now and rise for Hatikva as a hymnon, but as a prayer. And we invite Benjamin Gray to help us. Od balevav benima nefesh Yehudi homiha ulvate mizrach kedima ayin letzion Sophia. Od lo avda tikvatenu, atikva bat shnot alpayim, liotam chofshi be'artzenu, eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim, liotam chofshi be'artzenu, eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim. invite our movement workers up to help us in the singing of Oseh Shalom. You may be seated.
As we are standing here, grieving after last week's heinous attack, the fighting is still ongoing, along with the human suffering that inevitably comes with it. We invite you to join us in singing Oseh Shalom. We hope for peace and for no further loss of innocent lives, whether they be Israelis, Palestinians, or internationals in the area. As the words of our ancient prayer say, may the maker of peace in the highest bring peace upon us, upon all Israel and all humanity. Let us say, Amen.
Oseh Shalom b'mrama, Yaseh Shalom aleinu, le'al kol Yisrael, V'yimnu Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, le'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, le'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, le'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, le'al kol Yisrael.
Thank you for being with us this evening. Thank you for coming together to be together. We come together in the joys. We also come together when our hearts are in pain. We thank, especially tonight, the security team here at JW3 and CST for keeping us safe. We thank those that helped volunteer to make tonight possible, especially those on the tech team. We thank those who've shared their testimony with us today. Avi, Limor, Amir. We thank our movement workers for joining us with their voices in song and in prayer. We've had the opportunity to hear words of vulnerability, words which spoke to us powerfully this evening. We carry them with us now as their witnesses. As you leave this evening, there are small memorial candles and tea lights outside, which you can feel free to light in the yard for all of the innocent victims. May the one who makes peace make peace for us, for Israel, for all the world, as together we say, Amen. Amen. Erev Tov.